Welcome to the Peak Mental Performance Podcast with Joe Schillero, optimizing your mental health and athletic performance one episode at a time.
Appreciate you taking the time to chat about some of this stuff. So basically, what I've been doing with this series is talking about the mental side of training. And it's been nice because I've been able to talk to a lot of different guests that don't necessarily all compete or train in the same things, and I think you start to hear themes of what allows things to work for them. And I think that's something sometimes, especially in strength sports, we get caught up in the sets and reps and the individual little things. And I talked to Vincent DeCenzo the other day, and we were talking about how some of the same things that helped him be able to achieve things on the platform, that same passion and the discipline turned around, helped him to lose the weight. And if you're caught up in thinking there's like some secret sauce to everything, that's going to be perfect, then it's not going to transfer the same way.
Yeah, it's this has been said many times about a lot of different stuff, but I think people are paralyzed and they argue about the 1% that doesn't really make that big of a difference. That might make you from a second-team All-Pro NFL player to a first-team, but they're worried about the minutia. When sometimes you just gotta the other 99% is showing up, doing the right things in general, being consistent. The little stuff, but that adds up. But what you see on forums and what you hear bitched at seminars is the 1%, and they get paralyzed because they don't know if they should take micronized creatine. Or I don't know if there's another, I don't know.
Right.
I don't even know what the creatine is out there anymore. But I remember you get so caught up, and it's like you see that especially with supplements. Everyone's looking for that special supplement, or they think if they don't eat within this certain window, the world's going to come crashing down. My wife and I were joking the other day that she knew someone who said, if you don't take a post-workout drink within 45 minutes, you might as well not work out. Hundreds of years no one did that and they were fine. So it doesn't mean
definitely wasted all their time.
It's like, all those 25 years of playing in the NFL, man. So it's just very funny. And I think I understand, because in the internet world, there's so much information being processed. And I also think on a subconscious level, people self-sabotage their own training. It gives them a good excuse for not making progress, or for not doing the little stuff, or not the little stuff, but the boring shit that isn't very sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had that series that was on CNBC recently, that article series, and the second article talked about discipline and motivation. And I think I think that's something I've really liked, kind of even just that logo of that shirt you have that has discipline over motivation, because we always get all these questions about motivation, because motivation's like this sexy thing that everyone wants to be able to watch a video and then their motivation's back, or how do I get my motivation back? And I think it's almost
the memes that you see.
Yeah.
Like, what's your excuse, or all that stupid shit, and it gets people pumped up. But I'll just talk about this real quick. I remember when discipline's been a huge part of my life, and the lack of discipline has been a huge part of my life too in other areas. So I'm able to kind of see the difference. But it really hit home, and it was about 2 years ago. I was sitting in my weight room. I have a garage weight room. It was in the wintertime. And it was like maybe 18 or 20 degrees, but I always lift with the door open. And after about 30 to 45 minutes, it's freezing cold, but you're sweating. And I sat down between a set, and I was just fucking cold and miserable. And I was thinking, man, I would rather be anywhere but right here. Just because my house is literally 5 steps away. I have a fireplace. I can watch a movie. And I remember thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is just miserable. I'm freezing to death. I don't have a meet coming up or whatever. And I was like, it took me 45 minutes to realize how miserable I was. I'm like, well, this is just what I do. And I'm like, I didn't take a picture of it. I didn't really, make a big proclamation or anything about it. But it made me realize that, how it's been ingrained in me for so long. The discipline of going out there and doing stuff. And whether or not I have anything coming up, I do know that in some point I'm going to want to do something. I'm going to be ready for it, even if it's just being healthy. But, you see it all the time with people that talked about, I'm not motivated to train. It's like, well, a lot of people, I'm not some days. I don't want to be in there. But it's just because it's a habit for so long. I always liken it to brushing your teeth or flossing. You never really think about, well, hopefully you don't think about brushing brushing your teeth. Enough people with morning breath make me want to puke. But anyway, you just do it anyway, and you don't even think about it. And with a lot of the stuff that just training related, I can't tell how many people I've trained with. You walk in the ring like, ugh, this sucks. But they do it anyway. They just got to relieve the idiocy in their head, And that's not to say like they're not positive or anything like that, but I get it. And I remember thinking, hold on, James, that motivation is a emotional response, and because it's an emotional response, there's going to be massive ups and downs. And if you can't weather the downs, you're not going to do good at anything. Yeah. If you only train when you're feeling motivated, or you see a favorite picture or watch a video to get you pumped up, it's like kind of like taking like a massive ephedrine stack before you train. If that's that's what you always need to do, at some point it's going to backfire on you. So
yeah, absolutely.
Now the bad thing is with certain things I'm very well disciplined in, other things I'm horrible in, and I see the effects of it, and it stinks. But if I could apply some of the basic stuff that I learned from training into other parts of my life, and I have, school and stuff like that. I fucking hated school. That's always one of my favorite things. It's like, well, I don't like school. I'm like, do you think anyone likes school?
Yeah.
There's like a very small minority who want to be full-time students. But it's just a matter of, getting up, getting in the habit of going to class, taking the notes, just doing the stuff that you need to do. And I wasn't gung-ho about school. I'm sure most people watching this or hearing this probably didn't love school, even if they graduated. But it's just what you did, and you got in there and did the work. So at least in the big picture, I got the discipline to do all the stupid shit, the bigger stuff.
Yeah.
Trimming my beard and stuff like that, I don't have no discipline.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think, like you said too, about it being a habit. I think people have to realize discipline is a habit, and it's something you have to do. And it's something you had written one time in a blog or part of the book or something. I had read one time about, doing the little things in training correctly, because if you start not doing those things correctly, it's going to carry over to other shit. And
I talked about that to our kids that I with the other day, and it could be as simple as putting 220 on the bar, not 225. That's what the training calls for. I remember a good story about a guy, really great coach, and this kid came to him and they said, hey, I'll do anything you tell me. And the guy's like, all right, well, if you fuck up once, you're done. Well, a couple weeks in the workout, he put like 300 on the bar instead of 295. And the coach said, you're out of here. You're not willing to do the little stuff. Now, I know everyone watching this like, wow, it's a dickhead thing, but it makes a difference.
Yeah.
It's the stupid, my wife always says, if you don't have 5 minutes to warm up, you don't got time to work out. And I hate doing all that stupid shit. The rolling and the, I don't know, all the different names of the exercises, but I just sit there and suffer through it. Don't suffer, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I know if I let that go, then something else is going to go. And it's a slippery slope. So
yeah, that's
real quick. The key though is not having a million little things. Like with my son's trying to get in the picture here. He, with just, let's just say for mobility, which 99% of people watching this really don't like doing. I have a bunch of different things that I do that would qualify as a warm-up. So sometimes I just don't want to do a certain thing. I just replace that with something I kind of want to do that has the same kind of effect. So it's maybe having a broader idea of what you're doing. Like for conditioning, let's say you don't want to go out and run. Well, you just go ride the bike or something and you're done. At least you did something. That's part of the habit that you've been building. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's what I've tried to remind myself is like sometimes all these little things in training where it's like, is this one rep of this one assistance movement really going to make a difference? No, but it's like if I start getting in the habit of doing that
Yeah.
shit, it's going to happen in other stuff, and
And
that's
you have to do 50 reps of this, and you cut it down to 25. Then pretty soon, like, well, 10's just as good. I mean, what the hell? Then you're not even doing anything.
yeah, and it's like something of like I let myself do that. I cheated myself, you know, and I think it's a good way to think about it. You know, for a big part of your program, obviously, is you know, setting rep PRs, and you know,
Yes.
you have conditioning challenges. You have all these challenges. How valuable is that for people to have those mental and physical challenges in their training?
I talk about this to the kids I work with, but just from a big perspective, in general, you and I, and just about anyone who's listening to this or reading this or whatever, has a pretty easy life. I mean, we don't have to go out and hunt for our food usually. We're out of the, oh shit, what is it? We're out of the food cycle, you know, like we don't run inside, like, whatever, I can't even think of the name, but whatever. We don't have to defend ourselves from bears and tigers and whatever.
Right.
And so, but beyond that, our jobs are pretty easy. Like you and I are sitting down right now, right? And majority of your day is probably spent sitting down. And even the people that do physical work, it's not like it used to be, because when they get home, they don't have to do anything physical in general. So I think we've lost that ability to physically challenge ourselves, especially men. We've seen our role in society diminish greatly due to mechanization, or we're just not coveted anymore. What we have to offer, our physical being, isn't. We don't really need it anymore. So I think we're kind of losing that part of ourselves. And obviously, even women used to, even if they were just a stay-at-home woman, they still had to do a ton of chores and they're working their asses off. So I think when we lose that, we lose part of our human nature. And I think just giving yourself, let's say you work out 3 times a week, and it doesn't have to be challenges every day. I don't believe in that. It's one of my big things I yell at the kids every day. I said, training is not testing. We're training. And testing, well, that's what the football games are for. But anyway, you still need to push yourself occasionally or shoot for a goal, because you need that physical challenge to kind of get in touch with you, you know. And I tell the kids all the time who play football, I said, we're honoring all the men that have come before us that went to battle. And this is our version of battle. It's not the same thing, but this is the way we honor the men that came before us and our gender heritage, or whatever you want to say. We're supposed to be going to war. We're supposed to be fighting. And since society pretty much frowns upon any kind of physical confrontation anymore, right? You can't even punch a kid in school without the fucking police come in and getting arrested and all that shit. It used to be, who won? All right, shake hands and you were good.
Right.
But that's since gone. So I think that physical nature needs to be, that physical culture needs to be embraced. And I think it's awesome, man, because as well as I do that when your day is all mental, you go fucking crazy. And I know they did a school, an elementary school somewhere in Texas. I want to say it's in Fort Worth, but I'm not sure. They took the kids out of class 4 times a day for like 15 minutes to do recess. Well, their test scores and everything skyrocketed because the kids got to get out some energy. And if you look at how our schools are being done, now this is kind of a crazy way of thinking about it, but you basically in school for 8 hours. You sit on your ass for 8 hours. And what do you do after school? Well, they give you 2 to 3 hours of homework sometimes. So they're kind of conditioning you to sit on your ass and sit in a cubicle, and follow directions. Yeah. It's kind of like, I don't know if it was done purposely, but it just kind of stinks that we don't have anything physical really in our lives. I mean, people mow the lawn, or they did gardening. You ever hear old women say, I'm active, I garden. It's a lifestyle. It's an activity. It's not training. So,
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think in even with like social media and the internet age and everything, everyone feels like they're standing for something all the time, but it's almost this very artificial thing we've created where it's like you should have parts of your life, even if it's through, training is, totally a choice thing, but it's like create some challenges for yourself that really test yourself, not that aren't just kind of imaginary.
I mean, how fucking lazy is that? You just write a mad email to so-and-so and get someone fired, and and you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
That's why I tell everyone who's kind of coming up in the industry, I tell them, listen, if you say something dumb or say something that pisses people off, don't apologize if you don't. If you don't feel sorry, fuck it. You don't have to apologize. Dude, just wait a couple days. No one gives a shit.
Yeah.
Dude, people are so fleeting in their anger and protest these days. Just give it a rest for 2 days and you're gonna be fine. So
yeah. So you're working with the high school kids now.
Yes.
Obviously, these kids, unless their dad's into lifting or something, they probably didn't know who you were before meeting you for the team. They're not reading your book necessarily. Yeah. They don't care about percentages of sets or
No.
So the stuff you're instilling in them is more, these are concepts that you're trying to teach them. So what are some of the things you're trying to get them to start figuring out now that's going to carry on to these other other things?
You have to kind of, in the beginning, there's no concepts really. You just put them through the work.
Yeah.
And because they don't give a shit, most of them, at least in the beginning, they don't care. And nor should they care. That's not their job to care. I'm the coach and I'm there to provide help. But what ends up happening is they start to see some success, and there's a couple kids that are really interested in training. So then you just explain to them very basic stuff. And you try to put it so they understand it, all that other stuff. But the couple things I always try to get by is, one, we never kill the kids. I tell them we don't need to kill you. We don't have to run you in the ground, in the weight room or on the track or the field or anything like that. Just looking for good, solid effort every day. And I love watching these people who, and this is what social media has done is, let's say you and I train for 12 weeks and we go out and do this fucking insane prowler challenge, and then we do a farmer's walk thing and whatever. It's 50 minutes, me and Joe kicking ass, and it's crazy. Well, people will say that, I'm like, wow, that's what they do all the time. We pretty much phoned it in, and built this up, and then one day we did a challenge. And I think people see that, they see the snapshot that on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. I don't know what's Snapchat. That's something, right? That it disappears or something, right? After 8 seconds. I don't think
so. I think it started as a way to send people pictures of your dick, and then it became something else. Because somebody started telling me at work about how we should start using Snapchat for marketing, and I was like, isn't that something 12-year-olds are sending dick pics to each other with?
Check out my hairless balls.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the big things, because I think that's a huge. I'm not going to name names because I think that's disrespectful, because I don't know the whole story. But every the winter time after college football comes around, usually a team that does pretty bad, they fire their strength coach and they bring a new guy in, and there's always reports of these kids throwing up and he's making a difference, and I can go on and on about this, but you don't fucking need to do that. It's so stupid, and it's just it makes our profession look like a bunch of dummies. And I'm okay with being a meathead. I'm okay with being kind of a Neanderthal, but just don't be an idiot. And there's a difference between being Neanderthal and being an idiot. Anyway, so that's one of the big things, even from the coaches that I work with, they had to kind of realign their thinking. And I didn't do this maliciously, you're an idiot, like I said, most people. But, I'll give you an example. After we started the off season in November, by the end of December, we had made more progress in those 2 months, really just kind of phoning it in a little bit. I say that they still worked very hard, but they just worked and worked and worked, and we never killed them. By the time the end of December, these kids had made more progress, according to the coaches, than they did all year. And that's one of the big things I try to get in them. Obviously, the technique stuff, doing things right. And occasionally, every, 2 or 3 weeks, they'll have some kind of different challenge in there that won't make a difference to what they're doing. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like pointless challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Like we do a lot of dumbbell squats on our bench day, and I'll be like, all right, during some time today, you got to do a set of 20 to 30 reps with the heaviest weight you can handle. It's really consequence free because even if they're holding a 150-pound dumbbell, it's just 150 pounds. It's not like they're squatting 600 pounds and their spine's getting crushed. So anyway, so we always do a couple of those things. But anyway, the whole point is we never kill them. We built up a great base of training. And I just want them to have success in the weight room and on the field when we run, because it just breeds success. And all of a sudden, they start seeing everyone else and themselves making progress. Like, oh, we're doing things right. We have a chance. And I think, we had a tough year last year. I had just got onto the staff at the beginning of the season. So, but I think the kids sometimes have trouble believing what they are because it's a small town. You've been here, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not like we have this huge tradition like, Notre Dame or Alabama, where they can rely on the ghosts of the great to help them through. So, but as far as like training concepts, it's really hard because they're kids. And I would never expect them to, to see the big picture. Some of them are beginning to. Like we had and it's good because these kids who do have great success, like there's a kid who deadlifted 500 for 4 reps the other day. Okay, he can jump onto a 42-inch box. He weighs 300 pounds. His heaviest training weight up until then was like 340 or 350. Now think about that for a second. His heaviest weight he did. So the kid's like, oh man, now okay, so I don't have to, beat my head in the ground. So they see his success and it just morphs and morphs and morphs. It's like a big giant ball rolling, just collecting shit, good stuff and not shit. So what's funny is after he pulled 500 for floor, which was on a Friday, he comes to me on Monday and it's like, man, I can't do that all the time. It's just to really wipe me out. I'm like, well, yeah, now you understand, right? So, anyway, I'm very proud of the kids. I tell the kids at the end of every session that to thank them for their effort because it makes my job easier. They're not on scholarship; they're not getting paid, so it's a real tribute to them. I think a lot of strength coaches, and rightfully so, get a lot of credit, but I think the kids need to deserve some credit for buying in. It's not easy, especially when I came there. Who is this guy? He's covered in tattoos. He looks like an idiot, So it took a while to earn their trust, but ironically, word got around like I had, 40,000 Instagram followers or something, and like, oh my God, you must be someone, because my Instagram had followers. So whatever.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's something that I've really started to grasp more the last couple of years has been like training being, it's like how much work can we accumulate and build momentum towards the end goal versus like before, it's so easy to get, and I still do get caught up in the individual day of like, man, this weight's embarrassing to work with, or why am I doing this? Or, I feel like shit today. And it's like, well, if you really sit down and look at it, you almost have to plan your training like a sociopath. Like you have to sit down and you have to think very, emotionlessly about like, here's point A, here's point B. How much work can I safely accumulate to be in a healthy place to beat my potential at point B? And that's so hard.
Yeah. And it is it's much easier to coach other people than it is yourself. And I see that even with me all the time, I have to kick myself in the ass. But I see it so much, everyone talks about, if I throwing's too slow, I'm not lifting this amount of weight for this long. It's like, well, we're not testing. It's just working and working and working. We had a kid on Wednesday who hadn't, his first, when we started in the off season, he benched 135 for, 5 reps. And I don't think we handled anything over 165. And he benched like 205 for 8, one day. He was really excited. I'm like, do you see what we're doing now? He's like, shit, this works. I'm like, yeah, he's a freshman. So
that's crazy. Yeah.
Anyway, it's just, it's easier because honestly, we talked about the motivation and discipline. There's no emotion. I have great amount of a positive emotion for the kids, but not about their training numbers. Does that make sense? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, if this is the weight that you're supposed to be doing, this is the weight you're supposed to be doing. But we've had more, I've seen it more and more since because I have so many kids at one time. Just the positive effects of just the accumulation of of just work. Like you said, it's like, how much work can I accumulate, not ruin yourself, you know?
Yeah. And ironically, that work tends to be pretty boring by most people's standards. And it's like,
you're not sniffing ammonia every fucking set.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I've been, since the last meet I had, I've been like training embarrassingly light. And it's like, I'm thinking, and I have to every day fight the self-doubt of like, man, am I training too light? Am I training too light? And then I had a day where I did some workup sets and went a little heavier, and I hit a rep PR with, 200 pounds more than I've had on the bar in months. And I'm like, well, there we go. Now I gotta stay in the path. And I think that's the value of, like, you have to give yourself those little, like, mini PRs or goals too, to give yourself some small victories to keep you on the path too, which I think is good.
One of the things in our new book that I did was I show you how to program. Okay. And basically I got this from some kind of throws coach, and I don't remember where I read it, but you pretty much set your train up where you have 2 cycles of what I call a leader. And that's where you just do the fucking work. That's 6 weeks generally. You just do the work. And then you have 1 cycle, about 3 weeks, where you kind of bring it up a little bit, test a little bit, and then you go right back. So you have all these little mini peaks without totally bashing your head in the wall. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And for guys who are a little more experienced, it's really good because you can kind of accumulate a lot of work in 6 weeks, and then you know how that is. And then you can kind of test like you did. Now with the younger kids, we just pretty much accumulate work throughout the entire year.
Right.
Because they just don't have I always tell our head coach, we're just building this base of this pyramid as big as we can. So once the season comes, we're going to be okay. And the best way to do that is just like we talked about, is chipping away at the rock with a tiny little hammer, a huge boulder, and eventually the whole thing is going to break down. But it's not the last hit that breaks the boulder, right? When you're over, it's the 10,000 hits that came before that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I've made for a long time with training, was putting so much value into hitting this, 97% single. And it's like, okay, congratulations. I just proved to myself that I can do that in training. And now I probably messed up my training for the next 2 weeks. And it's like, there's been so many times now where I realize I face this decision of, like, I can do decision A, which is a little more boring. It's a little lighter, but it'll allow me for the next 3 weeks to be able to keep accumulating that. Or I can be short-sighted and hit this, PR single that is cool. You get the video from it, whatever, but then your next 2 weeks, you've destroyed your chance to continue that momentum to go.
Yes. And the older you get, the more that working up ruins you a little bit. And the younger you are, the less you should kind of do that, because you simply don't have the strength to do it. And that's one of the big reasons. Just this kind of goes off in another direction is, for example, we had a kid who was an 8th grader who could pull 155 for like 5 reps or something. But if he did that a second time, he would lose all his technicals, his work. I don't know what the weight was, but it was like 55, 185. I don't know what it is. So for like 6 weeks, we worked up to something kind of heavy for 3 to 5 reps. And then we backed down and just did 135 for 10 sets of 5 on the deadlift. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. After those 6 weeks, he can now do any weight that he can hold with perfect form. And this kid's an 8th grader. And now he's like, dude, you proved that you know what you're doing. And all the other kids see that. They're like, oh, shit, well, maybe I just need to work on the slow road a little bit. Because one of the things I found out is the slower you go, and I'm sure you can understand this a little bit, the faster your strength gains will be. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Like, and the more, I always tell people to keep their head down. Don't always be looking for the goal a little bit. Just focus on your next step forward. Focus on that next set, which, again, this is another big thing with my life. And I tell this to the kids is, let's not worry about the first game of the year. Let's not worry about two-a-days. Let's just worry about this next set. Just put your foot, it's even with your life, it's like, I was downstairs playing the guitar and stuff with my son, and we did that when I was there. I was doing that, and I saw it was like 12:50. I'm like, well, this next thing is I got to go talk to Joe. That's the next step, and I'm not worried about what I got to do after this. It's just, being in the moment a little bit and concentrating on what's at hand rather than looking too far forward. You start to stumble too much, so it's a little off the reservation, I know, but
no, definitely,
it's a huge thing because, like, you remember going to school and how much you're like, oh, fucking school sucks, right?
Yeah.
Set whatever time you went to school. Well, let's just get through the first period. What do I got to do to get through the first period? And then the second period. And then before you know it, it's the end of the day, you're like, it wasn't so bad. Or I remember playing football. You're worried, like, all day. You're like, fuck, man, I know we're going full pads. My neck is effed up. I'm like, well, just let's worry about getting to class. And then you don't have that big dreaded thing hanging over your head. So,
yeah.
On another point, this is just, I see this in football, and I'm sure it happens in basketball and baseball. Is before the season starts, there's all this pressure to win. And like, for example, during a football game, if you, me, and 9 of our friends played offense, right, and all we care about is scoring touchdowns, well, then you don't end up doing the job that you do that play very well. You're more worried about the touchdown. So I tell the kids, let's just win this battle. Every play is a battle. Just win the battle. And if you win all the battles at the end of the game, guess what happens? When I said either you're going to win or the team was just better than you, and that's fucking fine. That's okay. You lose, big deal. So it's just about the next battle. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It's like you said before. You don't give a shit about the kids' numbers, but ironically, because you don't, and you're focusing on the other things, the numbers get better.
Yes, I don't have my ego doesn't get in there lifting.
Yeah.
Even with the kids who get really strong, I have to back off. I have to remember, like, let's not take off more than we can chew. Like, we had one kid, and this is the most amazing progress I've ever seen. His best bench coming into the off season was 185 for 5. Okay. So we started off with like a training max of like 185. And by the time we reached a 210 training max, which I don't know how many weeks that or how many cycles that is, but I'm sure someone could figure that out. He went from, remember, 185 for 5 to 225 for 20. Now think about that. He didn't hand over weight over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I talked to him. I'm like, dude. He's like, well, you think we should adjust the numbers? And I'm like, yeah, we'll do that. And I came back. I'm like, dude, no. We're just going to keep on this fucking same track. And because we just did something. Think about that. 185 for 5 for 225 for 20. It was a massive strength gain. Now, granted, he's one of the kids that really bought in, really believed in what he was doing. He made the necessary sacrifices throughout his, the eating and the sleeping and everything else, and the assistance work. So that's not common. Not every kid. I don't even know what the strength gain is, right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the I just forgot what I was going to say. I've done that before where I saw when I looked back, especially when I was competing in gear, I noticed I would like lay this foundation of like, in your off season or whatever. Yeah. I'd come into the gym and be like, I'm going to work up and see how my strength is. And it would be really good. And then I would change all my training to now start peaking my strength based on that. And then, ironically, I would get weaker, and it would not go well. And now it's like I sit down and I think I should have just kept doing exactly what I was doing, and then I would have been fine. And it's a learning process. It's like one of those things where it's like I don't regret making those mistakes because otherwise I wouldn't have figured it out. But
what kills you though is you knew the answer.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. It's one thing if you go out and we're driving, me and you, and we get lost, and it's like, but we had the fucking map.
Yeah.
Our GPS said go straight. We're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is and even if you didn't know it, you had all the evidence. You had all the evidence in front of you. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, and that was one of the valuable things of like when I look back in, that's why I think it's so helpful with keeping a training log. Is like I look back in my training logs and I was like, I was like looking at the dates, the numbers I'm hitting, and I'm like, I think I've been doing this backwards for the last year or two.
I have a program that I put on my forum called Never Peak Again. It was under the semblance of everything that you just said. I'm like, a million guys I know, they spend 10, 12 weeks and they're kicking ass and they ruin everything in 4 to 6 weeks. They ruin everything. So I'm like, fuck, never peak. Even with young lifters, they ask how to peak. I'm like, don't. Just train. If it's a Saturday meet, just train, and then Monday and Wednesday, take the next 3 days off, go in fucking strong, have a cup of coffee or something, before the meet, and you're going to be better. Because people, I'm sure you know this, or you've actually done this, or know people that done this. they do the meet 10 times before the meet.
Yeah,
I gotta hit my openers. It's like, dude, it's fucking
I swear, dude, there's been people who have told me they're hitting their projected second and maybe third attempts before the meet, a week before the meet, and I try to understand where they're coming from, but I just don't get it. I'm like, but isn't that what the thing that you signed up for, that you paid the $200 for, is to get your second attempt there?
Yeah. No, I videotaped it, dude. It's good.
Yeah, that's one thing I think I'm coming to realize. I think peaking for powerlifting is extremely overrated. I think
yes, it is.
I think you have to, there's, depending on the situation, obviously, if you're in say a bench shirt, you got to make sure you can touch what you need to touch with, things like that. But in general, it's all the people I work with, I'm like, as long as we know what your opener is going to be, I want you feeling good, and I want you biting at the bit, chomping at the bit to go into the meet. Well, why would we use? You have all this momentum. You have all this. You're ready to kill me because I won't let you go heavy. Why would we then let you burn that all off 7 days before the meet hits?
It's and then people will always say, well, I don't. Who's a big time powerlifter these days? I don't know. It's Tommy John. We'll just pretend the great pitcher. Well, he peaks. When he's also 220 guy squatting 850.
Yeah.
You're an 850 pound guy squatting 220. So, they always use the upper. They use the exception to prove the rule a lot of times.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I always, and I have to, again, you have to remind yourself a little bit. Just go in, even when Matt Rhodes and Vincent DeCenzo came and we did our little NOV meet, which is just a bunch of dudes getting around and watching movies all day and then occasionally going out and training. I was like, people were asking me what I was doing. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just training. Whatever happens at the meet happens. And I felt great, And I don't know if I handled anything over 400 pounds in the deadlift, and I did, 535 for 5. It's like, well, that's pretty good. I'm good. And after the meet, I just reset all my numbers, went on my way. I'm almost at the point now where I want to lift. I don't want my lifts to go up. I just want for the next 8 to 10 years to stay the same. Because, if I'm a 52-year-old guy still pulling 535 for 5, I'm doing pretty good.
You should you should have a program called the Stay the Same program.
Yeah, the homeostasis program.
Yeah. The consistent mediocrity program.
Well, the older you get, you realize, and I'm not there yet, although I don't have any plans to compete or anything. It's, once you get to a certain age, if you've been pretty good, I'm not saying, this doesn't count for the guy who's never really done anything. He's like, I'm stronger now at 50 than I was 20. I'm like, that's a waste of a fucking life.
Yeah.
What a waste. Because I know what it was like to be 20 and how mobile and explosive and just awesome I felt. And I know how it is to be 40. It's things are, But anyway, once you get to a certain age, if you've been on top for a long time, staying close to where you are is a great amount of is a great feat in itself. I remember Dan John, and he made I don't know if this was a joke or not, but it was a great idea. His goal is to lose a pound a year. So he says, let's say over 15 years, once you reach age 35 or 40, whatever it is, you generally gain 5 or 8 pounds a year. Mm-hmm. So technically, if you take that into account and then your weight loss into account, you end up losing 60 pounds compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
And everyone can do a pound a year, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. How many people do you know that can't lose X amount of weight ever? They always gain weight. But if you just said, listen, can you lose a pound this year? Yeah, if I can do that. Yeah, it's doable. It's workable. And after 20 years, you're down 20 pounds. If you're not morbidly obese, that's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when people scoff at when they start competing, like, what if I told you could put, 10 pounds on your bench this year?
Yeah.
That's nothing. But then it's like 5 years down the road, they're like, oh man, I wish I could put 10 pounds on my bench this year.
I wish I could put 10 pounds on my total.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that was I remember Dave talking about that. I think his best bench was like 590 or something. And just he would hold a 10-pound plate or whatever it was. And I can't do this much. I can't, it was a pretty, yeah, it's, once you get up there, every pound counts. But I'm not there anymore, nor do I care to be there anymore. So
right.
I'm the king of phoning it in these days.
Yeah. One of the other things that I thought was interesting is that, I know with you being a musician and being a fan of music so much, you use a lot of analogies with music. And I think for people who love training, it's really easy to get so enveloped in it that you start to not use your logic and use your head. And
Yes.
and I think sometimes if people can, I think there's a lot of value, and I've seen this lately, of looking at experts and things that you are not really into and looking at how they teach things and what makes them successful.
Yeah.
I've never done, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or MMA in my life, but I like listening to like coaches on how they teach and what they think makes successful people, because then you can almost see this clear, because you don't have a horse in the race. You're not like you're not offended by how he teaches Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So you can like watch what makes that successful, and I see things that then I can carry over and make my own training successful. And I'm sure that's it's something that seems like you take from like music and things like that too.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I don't know when I got married. I don't even know my wife's birthday, but I can tell you where I was when I first heard X album. There's a lot of stuff, and it's like I always use the band Darkthrone as an example for people that want to open up their own gyms. There's two guys in the band Darkthrone, and they never quit their day jobs. Now, Darkthrone makes quite a bit of money on merchandise sales especially, and obviously they sell records and all that stuff. Things have changed now, but they generally do fairly well. And they asked the guys, why don't you quit your day job? And it's like, well, if we quit our day job, we would rely solely on money. Then we wouldn't do what we thought was right anymore. And we do it at our own pace. We do whatever the hell we want. And people that are, have regular jobs and want to do their own business, training business. I always tell people, just keep your day job so you can fuck up. You can make mistakes. You can run it how you want to run it. You don't have to sell your soul to make money. And then only until you're basically at the verge of suicide with work do you then, quit your day job. But, there's, even with like the simplicity thing that I always try to instill in people, I got that from Paige Hamilton, who's a guitarist for Helmet. He's if Helmet's you kind of have to hear it, but it's a very simplistic way of playing. It's more complicated than people give it. People that understand music understand its complexity. But anyway, Paige Hamilton only plays in one tuning, in a drop D tuning for his guitar. And they asked him one time, why would you limit yourself? He's like, well, how good of a musician would I be if I can't do all? I need to do this or expand on this as much as I possibly can, and the sky's the limit. So if I need to change my tuning to change the way I write, then I'm not as good as I thought I was, So it always stuck with me. He's like, I need to explore the depths of this and see what I can get out of it before I start changing anything. So, but I remember I read that when I was probably 19 years old. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, do we really need to change things up just to change things up, or just because I'm not smart or good enough to figure it out on my own? So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I thought I listened to. I think you might have given it at Mark Ripeto's gym or something. You talked about the Dark Throne thing and Metallica and all that, and
Yeah.
that really resonated with me too. Because even like this stuff, like this podcast and these conversations I'm having,
Yes.
has nothing to do with my regular job, and I like it that way. Because as soon as I started to have to do something with this to make my bills for the month,
Yep.
it's going to get corrupted. It's not going to be the same. I'm just trying to have conversations with people that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
And so far, I've literally been choosing people that I'm like, I want to talk to this person for an hour, and then we'll record it, and then we'll put it up, and it's been cool because it's all the people I've talked to so far. Even if this whole thing, this podcast or whatever, even if I did it for 3 months and then it just died and it was done, I will have gained personally, from a selfish standpoint, a lot of knowledge from conversations. Like I'll have had a dozen conversations that made me better at the shit that I do, and that's it. So it's like I think you almost have to have some selfishness in the things that you're doing, or else it's just not the same.
Well, it's one of the things is a lot of gyms go under because guys who really like training want to open gyms. And then they realize that opening a gym is 99% business, 1% training.
Yeah.
And they suck at business. I remember Dave always saying that as soon as you want to open a gym, stop learning about training because you need to learn about the business. And that's why I'm very lucky my wife handles all the business stuff here. I'd go fucking crazy if I had to deal with all that stuff all the time. I wouldn't like to do any of the training. So always, if you can team up with someone, get one business person and one training person, keep those things separate, and you'd be a lot better off. Because as soon as it becomes a job or a business, like you said, it just becomes a fucking chore. And I would hate doing all the spreadsheets and all the bookkeeping and inventory. Like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to concentrate on training. So even so, though, if you don't have someone do the business, keep your business as simple as possible. For years, we only just did Amazon. And we just did it as well as we could. And, to expand our business, we may have to hire people. So what we do? We don't hire anyone. We just, well, then it's just more shit I got to do. And I enjoy my free time. I enjoy my family time. I enjoy all the little stuff. So, there's a price to pay for exponential business growth or any degree. I don't know. I just, I'm very happy with where I am. I think one of the hard things I had to come to deal with in this industry was at a certain point I had to figure what did I really want to do. And the good and bad things about this internet and stuff, I just didn't like the working with people and making a difference than I cared about all the accolades. I don't know. I just rather do something real. And, for a while I didn't post. For like a year I didn't really do anything social media wise. I just didn't want to do it. I just wanted to be with my family and help the people around this neighborhood. And some people that I still work with online, stuff like that. I got more joy out of that than getting likes. And I had to make a decision. What was more important to me. And we lost a ton of money because of that. A ton of money. But it just wasn't worth. Lost a ton of money because of that. A ton of money. But it just wasn't worth my time. So, or my well-being and stuff. Plus, we live well under our. We live well under our means.
Yeah.
So we don't. So I don't need to be a slave to the internet or to all that stuff, because you see a lot of people. And I think they love it. They love the attention and publicity. It just really wasn't my thing. So.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Ironically, I get we do sell a great amount of books. I'm still very popular, but I was able to do it a little more organically, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but
Jim, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I'll, I won't take up any more of your Saturday, but I think all this stuff's valuable, and I think the main reason I want to do this stuff is I want to get people thinking a little more outside of. We tend to think in that really small box of all these minutia, and I want people to think more about stuff like discipline and things like that. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat about all this, man.
Thank you for doing this, and thank you for help at the last seminar. I know you got me and Kyle in, right? Whatever. The way you organized the seminar and you gave us the parking passes, we really appreciate it. The good thing about that seminar, that was one with Buddy Morris, and was I took the head strength coach, and a lot of stuff they talked about we were doing. And he's like, holy shit. And then he's like, wow. And then I talked to some different guys that were pretty well known, and they were using some of the stuff that we were doing. And so it made me feel good, because he's like, wow, we're really on the right track, And then he got mad because he saw what the kids are doing. He saw what everyone else is doing. Then he was primarily training as a high intensity guy through college. And he looked at me, he goes, I don't know if I'm more happy or pissed because I got fucking cheated.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I mean, whatever you got to do, man. Don't take it out on me. I'm just trying to help you. So, but thank you. I don't know how big of a hand you had in that seminar, but
yeah, it was a lot of work, but it's good stuff, man. It's the conversations I have taking Buddy to the airport and chatting with you and stuff, they're all worth it. So it's good good relationships, man.
Yeah. There's some good dudes in this industry. There's some real fucking assholes, but there's some really, and the longer you get in this, the people that have been there longer, you can always tell. So they're good. Yeah. So, all right, Joe, thanks.
Absolutely.